My boyfriend looked at me with a disgusted expression and said, "I need someone successful like me." What he didn't know was I'd been secretly editing his reports and presentations for 2 years, helping him become successful. That promotion to senior director he just got? I spent 3 weeks building that presentation deck from scratch. I did the market analysis, created the financial projections, even coached him on how to answer the tough questions the night before. I'd been putting my own career on hold because I thought we were building our future together, promising that once he got this promotion and raise, he'd finally pop the ring. Instead, he shattered my heart into pieces. The day after he got the promotion, my boyfriend Jeremy took me to this expensive seafood restaurant downtown. I genuinely thought that this was it. He was going to propose. I made sure to get my hair, nails, and makeup done early that morning. But instead of proposing, he looked at me across the table with an amused expression and said, "Baby, can I be honest? All the other execs are dating rich and powerful women. I need the same thing. I hope you understand," he said, lacking all the gentleness I used to love. "You know, you're a great person, but I'm moving in different circles now. I hope you understand." I sat there stunned, trying to process what he was saying, but it didn't make sense. I juggled 2 jobs to keep us afloat and came home editing every single one of his work because he couldn't write a coherent business plan to save his life. Then he added the finishing blow. "You're more like an assistant than a girlfriend." Jeremy smiled and quickly paid for the pity dinner and left me there feeling devastated. I blocked his number and cried all night. And when I had more energy, I finally did something I should have done years ago. I updated my resume with all the strategic work I'd actually been doing and started applying to real jobs. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 interviews and 2 job offers waiting in my inbox. I got hired as a strategic operations manager at one of his company's biggest competitors. My new boss took one look at my work samples and said, "This is exactly what we needed." No, even more than that. "This is incredible. Good job." I blushed. For the first time in years, I was doing work that got credited to me. Meanwhile, Jeremy's first solo presentation without me ended in disaster. People were asking where his usual level of insight went. He started working overtime trying to keep up, but each report kept getting sent back for revisions. Then I got it, the lead to a major operational efficiency project. I built the entire strategy myself, and everyone was surprised. The CEO even personally congratulated me. And 2 months after I got promoted to senior manager, just 1 position below Jeremy's. Around that same time, I met Kian, director of the finance department. We got paired for a small project. He was completely different from Jeremy. He applauded my ideas and praised me during meetings. So when he asked me to date him, I didn't even hesitate to say yes. And things went steady. Until Jeremy found my LinkedIn and started spamming my inbox with messages. "Hey, I know things ended badly, but I made a huge mistake. Can we talk?" he asked. I ignored it. Then he sent another. "I'm working on a major strategy proposal and I really need your insight on something. Just as a friend?" But when I still refused to respond, he sent a long paragraph about how I was being petty and vindictive. "You're really going to let me fail after everything we built together?" I showed Kian the messages over dinner and watched him burst into laughter. "Built together? He means the things you built for him?" I sent back one single message. "You told me I was just an assistant who didn't match your success. Go ask one of those executive women for help." "You're being very unprofessional," he texted back. That's when I knew that nothing I'd say would ever get to him. Then it happened. The big promotion to director. The same level Jeremy was at when he dumped me, except I actually earned it. Kian proposed that weekend at my celebration dinner with the ring I had always wanted. It was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life, but it was far from it. Because right as Kian got down on one knee, for the entire restaurant to see, hundreds of pairs of eyes all locked onto us, it happened. Jeremy stood up from the back and started walking in our direction. I didn't even notice him. All I saw were those magic, "Will you marry me?" words being interrupted by Jeremy shoving Kian off balance, then staring at me with these bloodthirsty wild eyes. Turns out without me, his recent project had underperformed so bad, he got demoted below management level. And now he was out for revenge. The restaurant erupted into total chaos. Jeremy stood over Kian with his fists still clenched while Kian tried to push himself up from the floor. My brain froze for maybe 2 seconds before my work training kicked in, and I grabbed my phone. I started recording everything while my hands shook. The restaurant manager came running from the back with 2 servers right behind him. Other people at nearby tables were staring at us, and I could see at least 3 other phones pointed in our direction. The manager got between Jeremy and our table while one server helped Kian stand up. Jeremy was breathing hard and his face was red and sweaty. The other server stood next to me and asked if I was okay. I nodded but kept my phone recording because I needed proof of what happened. The manager was talking to Jeremy in a low voice and trying to move him toward the exit. Jeremy kept looking past him at me with this crazy expression I'd never seen before. Kian finally got to his feet and I could see his knee was scraped and bleeding through his torn pants. His nice white shirt had a rip at the shoulder from where he hit the floor. The manager told Jeremy he needed to leave right now or they would call the police. Jeremy started to say something, but the 2 servers moved closer to him, and he finally turned and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned back and yelled something about how I ruined his life. His voice was so loud that everyone in the whole restaurant heard it. I felt my face get hot with embarrassment, but I kept recording until he was completely out the door. The manager came over and apologized about 100 times. He asked if we needed medical help or if we wanted to call the police. I told him we just wanted to leave. He said he understood, and that the meal was completely free, and he was so sorry this happened. I thanked him and asked for his name, and he said it was Robert Delgado. I made a mental note to remember that. Kian put his arm around me, and we walked toward the exit. I could feel every single person in that restaurant watching us. My legs felt shaky and weird, but I kept my head up. We made it to the parking lot, and I finally stopped recording. Kian was limping a little, and his knee was still bleeding. In the car, I immediately switched my phone to camera mode and started taking pictures. I took 3 photos of Kian's scraped knee from different angles with the timestamp visible. Then I photographed his torn shirt and made sure the damage was clear. Kian watched me work without saying anything at first. I opened my notes app and typed in Robert Delgado as the manager's name. Then I tried to remember the couple who was sitting at the table right next to us. The woman had short blonde hair and the man wore glasses. I wrote down every detail I could remember about them because they saw everything. I also wrote down the exact time when Jeremy showed up and when he shoved Kian. My hands were still shaking, but typing helped me feel more in control. Kian finally spoke up and asked if I was already building a case. His voice sounded tired. I told him I learned the hard way to document everything when dealing with Jeremy. He nodded and said that made sense. I added notes about which servers helped and exactly what Jeremy yelled before he left. The more I wrote down, the calmer I felt. Facts and evidence were things I could control when everything else felt crazy. I saved everything to my cloud storage right away just in case something happened to my phone. Kian started the car but didn't drive yet. He asked me what I wanted to do next. I said I just wanted to go home. Back at my apartment, Kian immediately said we should drive to the police station and file assault charges. He was pacing around my living room and his voice was getting louder. I sat down on the couch because I felt completely exhausted. I wasn't sure I wanted to turn this into a whole legal battle. Kian stopped pacing and stared at me. He said Jeremy couldn't just get away with what he did. I told him I knew that, but every time we escalated things, it put my professional reputation at risk. People at work would hear about it and some of them might think I was dramatic or unstable. Kian said that wasn't fair and I agreed, but said life wasn't fair. We argued back and forth for almost 20 minutes. It was the first real fight we'd ever had. He kept saying we had to do something and I kept saying I needed time to think. His face was red and frustrated. My voice got sharper than I meant it to. Finally, I said we should just sleep on it and decide in the morning when we weren't so emotional. Kian didn't like that answer, but he agreed. He asked if he should stay over and I said yes because I didn't want to be alone. We ordered food, but neither of us ate much. The engagement ring sat on my coffee table where I'd put it after we got home. Neither of us mentioned it. I couldn't sleep at all that night. At 2 in the morning, I gave up and got out of bed without waking Kian. I went to my laptop and blocked Jeremy on every single platform I could think of. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, even old accounts I barely used anymore. Then I logged into my email and started saving backup copies of all his previous messages. I created a new folder in my secure cloud storage and organized everything by date. There were so many messages from the past few months. The pattern was so clear when I looked at them all together. First, he tried to be nice and apologize. Then he asked for help with work stuff. Then he got mean and called me petty. Every message showed him getting more desperate and angry. I copied his text messages too and made sure the timestamps were all visible. The whole process took almost an hour. But when I was done, I had a complete record of his harassment. It all started right after I refused to help him with his work presentation. Looking at the evidence made me feel slightly better. I had proof that this wasn't random and that he'd been building up to something like tonight. I backed everything up to 2 different cloud services just to be safe. Then I made myself some tea and sat in the dark kitchen until the sun started coming up. At 6 in the morning, I opened my work email and started writing to Hannah Clements in HR. I kept the tone really professional and factual. I explained that I needed to disclose an incident that happened at a restaurant the night before. I wrote that it involved Jeremy, who works for a competitor company, and that the incident was public with multiple witnesses. I attached the photos of Kian's injuries and the torn clothing. I included the name of the restaurant manager and described the couple at the next table. I wrote down exactly what Jeremy yelled and exactly what he did. My hands were shaking. So bad I had to retype some sentences 3 times. I read the whole email twice to make sure it sounded calm and professional. I didn't want to sound hysterical or emotional. Just the facts about what happened and why I was reporting it. I added that I was disclosing this because Jeremy works for a competitor, and I wanted HR to be aware in case it affected my work or safety. I took a deep breath and hit send before I could change my mind. Seeing the email disappear into my sent folder made everything feel suddenly real and official. There was no taking it back now. I closed my laptop and went to check on Kian. Kian was awake and making coffee when I came into the kitchen. We sat down at my small breakfast table and had a serious talk. I told him we needed to agree not to post anything about the engagement on social media for now. We also shouldn't tell anyone outside our immediate families until this situation calmed down. Kian looked really disappointed. He said it felt wrong that Jeremy got to ruin this moment for us. I agreed completely, but said keeping it private would protect us from more drama. The last thing we needed was Jeremy seeing engagement posts and getting even more crazy. Kian understood, but I could tell he hated it. I took the ring from where I'd left it on the coffee table and slipped it onto my finger. It felt heavy and strange. I took it off again and put it back on. I was trying to reclaim some of the happiness I should have felt last night. Kian reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He said we'd get through this together. I nodded and tried to smile, but my face felt tired. After breakfast, I noticed that Kian's knee looked more swollen than it did last night. The scrape had scabbed over, but the whole area around it was puffy and dark purple. I insisted we go to urgent care to get it checked out. Kian said it was probably fine, but I told him we needed documentation for our records. He gave me this look that was half amused and half concerned. We drove to the urgent care clinic near my apartment and waited for almost an hour. The doctor who saw us was a middle-aged woman who didn't ask many questions. She examined Kian's knee and said it was just badly bruised, but nothing was broken or torn. She cleaned the scrape and put a proper bandage on it. Then she gave us an incident report form and a treatment summary for our records. Kian joked that I was very thorough about everything. I could see he was starting to understand why documentation mattered so much in situations like this. We left with official medical paperwork that proved his injury and what caused it. I added it to my growing folder of evidence. Hannah called me at exactly 9 in the morning. Her voice was calm and professional. She said she'd received my email and wanted to hear the full story directly from me. I walked her through everything that happened at the restaurant. I told her about the manager and the servers and the other diners who saw it all. I explained about the photos and the timestamps and the medical documentation we got that morning. Hannah listened carefully without interrupting. Then she started asking detailed questions about my prior interactions with Jeremy. She wanted to know if he'd ever contacted me at work or tried to come to our building. She asked if I felt safe coming into the office. I told her honestly that I did feel safe at work, but I was worried about running into him at industry events. Hannah said she understood and that she took this very seriously. She wasn't being dramatic or treating me like I was fragile. She was just professional and thorough. I appreciated that more than I could say. She told me she'd need to brief some other people and would get back to me soon. I thanked her and hung up. An hour later, Hannah sent me an email. She wrote that she'd briefed CEO Roderick Green about the incident. My stomach dropped when I read that. The CEO now knew about my messy personal life and my ex-boyfriend attacking my current boyfriend at a restaurant. I felt sick thinking about how that looked. But Hannah's email went on to explain that she had to brief Roderick because the incident involved a director-level employee and a public confrontation with someone from a competitor company. She assured me that Roderick was concerned about my safety and wasn't judging my personal relationships. The email ended by saying they were working on appropriate next steps and would keep me informed. I read it 3 times trying to figure out if there was any hidden criticism in the language. I couldn't find any, but I still felt the pressure building. I needed to handle this perfectly, so nobody at work thought I was unstable or dramatic. My career had to survive this no matter what. I pull out my laptop during lunch break and open a new document. My fingers move fast across the keyboard as I type out everything that happened at the restaurant. I start with the date and exact time Kian proposed. Then I add the moment Jeremy stood up from his table and walked toward us. I describe how he shoved Kian and the sound Kian made when he stumbled. I include the restaurant name and address. I list the manager's name from his business card, and the couple at the next table who gave me their contact information. I attach the photos I took of Kian's scraped knee and torn shirt with the timestamps visible. Then I scroll through my phone and screenshot all of Jeremy's previous messages, the ones where he asked for help with his presentation and called me petty. I organize them by date to show the pattern of harassment. Writing it all down in clear order makes me feel like I have some control back. I'm not just reacting anymore. I'm building a case. I attach everything to an email and type a short note to Hannah saying I'm available for follow-up questions. My hand hovers over the send button for just a second before I click it. There. It's official now. Kian comes home that evening with takeout and keeps saying he's sorry. He apologizes for not seeing Jeremy in the restaurant before it happened. He apologizes for getting shoved and making a scene. He even apologizes for the ring almost falling when he stumbled. I have to stop him and make him look at me. I tell him Jeremy ruined the proposal, not him. We sit on the couch with our food getting cold, and I explain that we're going to get through this together. But I need him to let me set the pace on how we respond. I need to be the one making decisions about what happens next. He nods and agrees, but I can see the frustration in his eyes. He wants to fix this for me. He wants to march over to Jeremy's company and make him pay. But that's not how this works. I squeeze his hand and remind him that staying calm and professional is how I protect my career. He squeezes back and says he understands. The next morning on the train to work, I stare out the window and try to prepare myself. The restaurant was busy. People saw what happened. Some of them probably work in our industry. By now, the story is spreading. I can picture people in conference rooms whispering about the director who got proposed to and then attacked by her ex. I decide right there that my strategy is complete silence. No posts on social media, no comments to anyone outside my company, no dramatic statements. I'll be transparent with my own HR department through proper channels, but that's it. External silence, internal honesty. I repeat it to myself like a plan I need to memorize. Hannah emails me that afternoon. The subject line says legal consultation and my stomach drops before I even open it. But the email is actually good news. She's setting up a call with Mandy Perkins from corporate counsel to discuss my legal options and how the company can support me. I feel this wave of relief wash over me. I'm not figuring this out alone anymore. I have professionals helping me. I reply right away and schedule the call for tomorrow morning. Then I sit back in my chair and take the first deep breath I've managed in 2 days. By Friday afternoon, Hannah sends me another email about new security measures. HR has flagged Jeremy's name in our visitor system. If he tries to enter our building, security will notify me immediately. They've also informed the front desk staff to call security if anyone matching his description appears. Reading through the protocols makes me feel safer, but it also makes me feel self-conscious. I'm the employee who needs special accommodations now. I'm the one causing extra work for security. I have to remind myself that I didn't ask for this. I'm the victim here. Jeremy created this situation when he decided to attack my boyfriend in public. I'm not the troublemaker. I'm the person protecting herself. The call with Mandy happens first thing Monday morning. She has a calm voice that makes me feel like she's handled situations like this before. She walks me through 3 main options. First, I could file a police report for assault. She explains that would create an official record but might escalate things. Second, we could send a formal cease and desist letter through attorneys. That would warn Jeremy to stay away without involving police. Third, we could try mediation to establish clear boundaries. She goes through the pros and cons of each approach without pushing me toward any choice. I tell her I need a few days to think about what feels right. She says that's completely reasonable and to call her when I'm ready to decide. By the end of my first week back at work, I'm starting to feel normal again. Then a colleague stops by my desk. She asks if I've heard the rumor going around. My blood pressure spikes before she even finishes. She says someone at Jeremy's company is telling people I stole strategy documents and intellectual property when I left my previous job. I feel my face get hot. I never worked at Jeremy's company. I helped him with his work while we were dating. That's completely different. But this lie could actually damage my professional reputation if people believe it. I thank my colleague for telling me and immediately request an urgent meeting with Roderick. I walk into Roderick's office with my employment history printed out. I explain the false rumor about IP theft and show him the documents proving I never worked for Jeremy's company. He listens carefully without interrupting. When I finish, he says he believes me. But then he adds that we need to have airtight documentation ready in case Jeremy's company tries to make this official. He's supportive but firm. My job is to prove the truth, not just claim it. I leave his office feeling both relieved that he believes me and stressed about having to defend myself against lies. Lainey shows up at my apartment that evening with bags of Thai food. She doesn't ask how I'm doing or try to give advice. She just unpacks the food and lets me talk. I vent about how unfair it is that I have to defend myself against lies on top of dealing with the assault. I tell her I'm exhausted from being professional and strategic all the time. She listens and agrees that it's completely messed up. She doesn't try to fix anything or tell me what to do next. Having a friend who doesn't need me to be strong or have a plan for an hour helps more than I expected. We eat pad thai and watch a cooking show and don't talk about Jeremy at all. Later that night, Kian brings up the engagement. He suggests we postpone any public celebration until this situation is resolved. I feel a sting of disappointment, but I know he's right. I agree, but then I tell him firmly that we're not letting Jeremy control our timeline forever. We'll announce it when we're ready, not when it's safe. He squeezes my hand and says he loves that I refuse to be pushed around. I look down at the ring on my finger and promise myself that Jeremy doesn't get to ruin this for us. Not permanently. The next morning, Hannah emails me a PDF attachment with the subject line, "Draft no contact letter for review." I open it at my desk and start reading the formal legal language. The letter addresses Jeremy's company HR department and outlines the restaurant incident in cold, professional terms. It describes how he physically confronted me and Kian during a private dinner, how he made contact despite prior blocking on all platforms, and how his behavior constitutes harassment under company policy. Reading it laid out like this, with legal citations and official letterhead, makes the whole thing feel more real and serious than when I was just living through it. The letter demands that Jeremy cease all contact with me, refrain from approaching me at industry events, and directs all future communication through attorneys if absolutely necessary. I read it 3 times, making sure every detail is accurate. Then I hit reply and type a simple message approving the letter. Hannah responds within minutes saying she'll have it sent out today through our legal team. I feel a small sense of power coming back, knowing that there will be actual consequences for what he did. 3 days later, I get an email from our finance audit team. They flagged some minor issues in a report I worked on last month. My stomach drops when I see the subject line. The discrepancies are tiny, just some formatting inconsistencies in how I labeled certain budget projections. It has nothing to do with Jeremy or anything personal, but the timing makes me paranoid. I wonder if everything I do is now under extra watching. I pull up my backup files and spend 2 hours that afternoon going through every number, every formula, every citation. I put together a complete documentation package showing my work and send it to the audit team with a professional note. They respond the same day saying everything checks out and they're closing the item. I sit back in my chair and remind myself that doing good work is the best response to all of this. I need to be perfect in everything I touch right now. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I can't give anyone a reason to doubt me. That week, I spend several evenings at home going through my old laptop. I open files I haven't looked at in over a year. In my cloud storage, I find draft after draft of presentations and strategy documents I created for Jeremy during the 2 years we dated. There's the market analysis for his Q3 presentation, the financial model for his expansion proposal, the competitive landscape deck that got him noticed by senior leadership. Each file shows me as the author in the metadata. The timestamps prove I created them days or even weeks before Jeremy presented them at his company. I make a new folder and copy everything into it, organizing by date and project. Looking at all this work I did for free while he took the credit makes me angry all over again. But now I have proof. Real, documented, time-stamped proof that I created this work, not him. A week after that, Mandy forwards me an email from Jeremy's company legal department. The message is carefully worded and vague. It suggests that I may have misappropriated confidential business strategies from a former relationship with their employee. It asks our legal team to confirm my employment history and whether I had access to their proprietary information. I can practically hear the eye roll in Mandy's forwarding note where she says this is clearly a fishing trip with no real specifics. They're trying to see if they can find something to use against me. I immediately send Mandy my folder of proof, the one with all the original files showing I was the author. She replies within an hour saying this actually helps my position a lot. The metadata shows I created the work before Jeremy ever presented it, which means if anyone misappropriated anything, it was him using my work, not the other way around. The next day, I get a call from Roderick's office. HR needs to implement some temporary measures while the intellectual property question gets investigated. They're limiting my access to certain files that involve competitive information about Jeremy's company. I understand why they have to do it. The company needs to protect itself and show they're taking the inquiry seriously. But it's still frustrating to be restricted when I haven't done anything wrong. I tell Roderick's assistant that I'll cooperate fully with whatever protocols they need. I focus on my other projects, the ones that have nothing to do with Jeremy or his company. I'm determined not to give anyone a reason to doubt my work or my character. During team meetings that week, I make a point of delegating tasks clearly and keeping everyone focused on current projects. I don't mention the personal situation at all. I just keep things moving forward like normal. One of my colleagues stops by my desk on Thursday and comments that I seem really calm and in control given everything that's happening. Another team member mentions that they appreciate how I'm not letting drama affect the work. This is exactly the image I want people to see. I refuse to be the person whose personal life messes up their career, even when it would be totally understandable. I'm going to prove that I can handle this professionally. The following week, Mandy calls me into a conference room. She suggests setting up a formal mediation session. The focus would be on two main issues. First, clarifying who actually authored the strategy work I did for Jeremy. Second, establishing clear boundaries for any future contact. I'm not sure Jeremy will be reasonable about any of this. He seems too angry and desperate. But Mandy points out that his company probably wants this situation to go away quietly too. They don't want a public fight about whether their former senior director was relying on stolen work. A mediation could resolve things faster than any other option. I think about it for a few minutes, then agree to try it before we pursue other legal steps. That same week, Lainey sends me a link to an industry discussion board. Someone posted anonymously about a messy proposal interrupted by an ex at an expensive downtown restaurant. They don't use any names, but I know immediately it's about us. The post describes the scene in enough detail that anyone who was there would recognize it. Within hours, I get texts from 3 different people asking if I'm okay. I don't respond to anyone. I close the browser tab and resist every urge to correct the story or add my side. I'm sticking to my strategy of complete silence outside of proper legal channels. Whatever people think or say, I'm not feeding the gossip. On Saturday, Kian's parents invite us over for dinner. We sit in their dining room and they bring up their concerns carefully. They mention that we both work at the same company. They say this drama with Jeremy might not look good to other people. I feel myself getting defensive immediately. But Kian stays calm and explains that we followed all the proper disclosure procedures when we started dating. We filled out the forms. We got approval from HR. We have nothing to hide. His parents back off a little and apologize. They say they're just worried about him, not trying to attack me. I take a breath and realize they're just being protective parents. They're not saying I did anything wrong. They're just scared this situation might hurt their son's career. I soften a bit and assure them we're handling everything correctly. Later that evening, back at my apartment, Kian mentions something that makes me stop cold. He says he reached out to a friend who's a lawyer to get some advice on handling a situation. I turn to face him and tell him firmly that he needs to stop. I appreciate that he's concerned, but I'm already working with our corporate counsel. Him going around me to get separate legal advice makes me look like I can't handle my own problems. It makes me seem weak or incapable. He apologizes immediately and promises he was just trying to help. I explain that I need him to support me, not take over. He says he understands, and that from now on, he'll ask before taking any action related to the situation. I feel the tension between us ease as we figure out how to be partners through this mess, instead of working against each other. That night, we sit on my couch and I pull my knees up to my chest while Kian sits facing me. I tell him I need to be clear about something. I need to lead my own defense here because my professional credibility is on the line. If he keeps jumping in to fix things or calling lawyers behind my back, it makes me look like I can't handle my own problems. He nods slowly and says he gets it now. He was trying to protect me, but he sees how that actually hurts my position. From now on, he'll ask before taking any action related to Jeremy or the situation. I reach over and squeeze his hand. I tell him I know his heart was in the right place. We're figuring this out together, and that's what matters. He squeezes back and says he's learning how to be a better partner through all this mess. I feel something shift between us. We're getting stronger even though the circumstances are terrible. The next morning, I wake up early and make coffee, then open my laptop at the kitchen table. I've been collecting evidence for weeks, and now it's time to organize everything into one complete timeline. I start with the oldest emails, the ones from 2 years ago where Jeremy first asked me to look over a report. I save each one to a new folder with timestamps clearly visible in the file names. Then I move to the draft documents. Every presentation I built for him, every strategy paper I wrote, the metadata shows I created these files on my personal laptop, not his work computer. I screenshot the properties panel for each document showing my name as author and the creation dates. Next, I pull up my calendar from the past 2 years. I'd mark down the nights I stayed up late working on his projects. Dinner with Jeremy prep session, help with question 3 analysis, fix board presentation. The entries are all there in my own handwriting from my paper planner, which I photograph page by page. Finally, I go through my text messages. I'd saved everything even after we broke up. Some instinct telling me I might need proof someday. There are dozens of messages where he thanked me. You saved my presentation. I couldn't have done this without you. You're a lifesaver with this report. I organize everything into one master document with sections for emails, drafts, calendar entries, and messages. Each piece of evidence gets a timestamp and a brief note about what it proves. Looking at this complete timeline spread across my screen, I feel my whole mindset shift. I'm not defending myself anymore. I'm presenting the truth with documentation that nobody can argue against. This is powerful. I have proof. 3 days later, I'm checking my work email during lunch when a message pops up from an address I don't recognize. The subject line says Industry Conference Panel Invitation. I open it and skim through the formal language. They're inviting me to speak on a panel next month about strategic operations and efficiency improvements. It's one of the bigger industry conferences, the kind where everyone who's anyone shows up. My first reaction is excitement. This is exactly the kind of visibility that advances careers. Then my stomach tightens because I realize Jeremy will probably be there. It's an industry event, and even though he's been demoted, his company usually sends people to these conferences. For about 30 seconds, I consider declining. I could make up an excuse about scheduling conflicts, but then I stop myself. I refuse to let fear of running into Jeremy make me turn down professional opportunities. I've worked too hard to let him control my career decisions. I hit reply and type out my acceptance. The following week, I schedule a meeting with Hannah to talk about conference security. I bring a printed photo of Jeremy and slide it across her desk. I explain that I've been invited to speak at this conference and there's a chance Jeremy might attend. Given what happened at the restaurant, I want to make sure there's a plan in case he tries to approach me. Hannah takes notes and says she'll coordinate with the conference organizers directly. She asks for the event details and promises to make sure security is aware of the situation. 2 days later, she emails me that it's all set up. The conference has professional security staff, and they'll be positioned near the registration area and panel rooms. They have Jeremy's photo and description. If he shows up and tries to approach me, they'll intervene immediately. I write back thanking her. I feel prepared instead of afraid, which is exactly the mindset I need going into this. The conference is on a Tuesday and Wednesday. I arrive early for registration on the first day, wearing my navy suit and carrying my leather portfolio. The hotel lobby is packed with people in business clothes, name tags hanging from lanyards around their necks. I'm scanning the crowd for the registration table when I spot him. Jeremy is standing near the coffee station about 50 feet away. My heart jumps hard in my chest, but I don't look away. Security is already positioned nearby, exactly where Hannah said they'd be. A woman in a dark suit with an earpiece is watching from next to a pillar. Jeremy and I make eye contact for maybe 2 seconds. His face goes tight and he looks away first, turning back toward the coffee station. I walk to registration, get my badge, and head toward the conference rooms. Nobody approaches me. Nobody causes a scene. I give my panel presentation at 11 that morning, and the room is about 2/3 full. I talk about documentation systems and attribution practices in strategy work, drawing on my own experience without naming names or getting personal. When I finish, several people come up to ask follow-up questions. One woman says she's implementing something similar at her company. A man in a gray suit hands me his card and says he'd love to continue the conversation. The feedback is genuinely positive, and I feel good about how I handled it. During the afternoon session, I'm sitting near the back of a large conference room listening to a presentation about market analysis. The speaker is mid-sentence when I hear a familiar voice behind me. I turn slightly and see Tristan Caldwell, who works at Jeremy's company, talking quietly to the person next to him. I recognize Tristan from industry events. He's saying something about Jeremy struggling since his promotion. Their management is concerned about his performance trajectory. The other person asks if there's a plan, and Tristan says they're working on it, but it's not looking good. I face forward again and process what I just heard. Part of me feels vindicated that other people are seeing his decline. It's not just me being petty or vengeful. His work genuinely isn't good enough without my help. But there's also this weird twist of something that might be pity. He's clearly drowning and people are noticing. Then I catch myself. I'm not responsible for his choices. He's the one who took credit for work he didn't do. He's the one who dumped me and then harassed me when I wouldn't keep helping him. Whatever consequences he's facing now are his own doing. After the conference ends, I drive home and check my personal email before bed. There's a message from an address I don't recognize with no subject line. I almost delete it as spam, but something makes me open it. The email has no text, just a PDF attachment labeled Jeremy Analysis Q2. I download it and open the file. It's a presentation with financial projections and market analysis. I skim through the slides and my stomach drops. Several of the projections look wrong. The numbers don't add up properly, and some of the market data seems inflated. This is from one of Jeremy's recent presentations to his management. My first instinct is to use this. I could forward it to people at his company. I could post about it anonymously on industry forums. This could destroy what's left of his credibility. But I stop myself. This is exactly the kind of thing that would make me look vindictive. I'd be stooping to his level, using anonymous tips to attack him. That's not who I want to be. I forward the email to Mandy instead with a brief note. I explain that I received this anonymously. I don't know who sent it, and I'm not going to engage with it or use it against Jeremy. I just want her to know it exists in case it becomes relevant later. I hit send and close my laptop. Mandy calls me the next morning and says she reviewed the anonymous tip. She confirms that while the information might be accurate, using it would look like retaliation. It could undermine my credibility and make it seem like I'm out to destroy Jeremy, rather than just protecting myself. She says my judgment to forward it to her instead of acting on it was exactly right. This is about defending myself, not attacking him. I thank her and feel good about the decision. I handled it the right way even when my impulses wanted revenge. That afternoon, Roderick emails asking if I can meet with him on Friday. When I walk into his office, he gestures to the chair across from his desk and gets straight to the point. He wants me to co-design new documentation standards for all strategy work across the company. The focus will be on attribution and authorship, making sure people get proper credit for their contributions. He says my situation highlighted a gap in company processes, and he wants my expertise to fix it. I accept immediately. This feels like real recognition. He's not pitying me or treating me like a victim. He's valuing my knowledge and asking me to lead an important initiative. I leave his office feeling appreciated for what I actually bring to the company, not defined by the drama with Jeremy. That evening, Kian comes over with takeout and we eat at my kitchen table. He sets down his fork and looks at me seriously. He apologizes again for trying to fix things earlier, for calling his lawyer friend without asking me first. He says he's been thinking about how to be better at supporting me without taking over. I suggest we try something new. Daily check-ins where we're both honest about how we're feeling and what we need from each other. Not big serious talks every time, just quick honest updates. He agrees immediately and says that sounds perfect. We finish dinner and move to the couch. He puts his arm around me and I lean against his shoulder. I tell him I'm glad he proposed even though the timing was terrible. Our relationship feels more solid now than it did before all this started. We're learning how to handle conflict and stress together instead of falling apart. He kisses the top of my head and says he wouldn't want to go through this with anyone else. We sit there quietly for a while, just being together, and I feel steady in a way I haven't in months. The next morning, I schedule a meeting with Hannah to formally disclose the engagement. Kian and I walk into her office together and she pulls out the relationship disclosure forms. I fill out my section listing my position as Director of Strategic Operations, and Kian fills out his section listing Director of Finance. Hannah reviews both forms and checks that we work in different departments with no direct reporting relationship. She files everything in both our personnel folders and gives us copies for our records. Hannah smiles and congratulates us, saying she appreciates us handling everything properly through official channels. I feel a sense of relief having it documented correctly. 2 days later, Mandy forwards me an email from an attorney representing Jeremy. The message proposes mediation to avoid mutual career damage from continued conflict. I read it 3 times and the phrasing bothers me because it makes it sound like I'm damaging his career instead of just defending myself. I call Mandy and she explains this is standard legal language, an opening move to start negotiations. She asks if I want to participate in mediation, and I think about it for a minute. Getting this resolved formally through a structured process feels better than the ongoing uncertainty. I agree to mediation, and Mandy starts coordinating with the other attorney. Within a week, the mediation session gets scheduled for 2 weeks out at a neutral location downtown. The scope will cover both the restaurant incident and the intellectual property questions about who actually created the strategy work. Mandy sends me a preparation checklist, and I start organizing my evidence. I pull out all the draft documents with my metadata, the emails with timestamps, the calendar entries showing when I worked on Jeremy's projects. I print everything and organize it into a binder with tabs for each major project. Kian helps me practice presenting the information in a calm, factual way, without getting emotional or defensive. We do mock sessions where he plays the mediator asking tough questions, and I practice staying neutral. The night before mediation, I barely sleep, running through my presentation in my head. The mediation takes place in a conference room with a professional mediator named Susan Delgado and attorneys for both sides. Jeremy sits across the table from me with his attorney, and I can see the tension in his shoulders. The mediator explains the ground rules and asks me to present my documentation first. I open my binder and walk through the timeline systematically. I show the first strategy document I created for Jeremy in March 2 years ago, pointing out the metadata showing I authored it on my personal laptop. I show the email where Jeremy thanked me for finishing his presentation the night before his big meeting. I walk through 6 major projects this way, showing clear evidence that I created the work while we were dating. I keep my voice steady and factual, avoiding any emotional language or accusations about him taking credit. The mediator takes notes and asks clarifying questions about dates and deliverables. Even Jeremy's attorney looks impressed by how thorough my documentation is. After my presentation, the mediator calls for a break and both attorneys step out to talk privately. When we reconvene, the focus shifts to negotiating terms of a joint statement. Jeremy's attorney proposes language saying we collaborated on strategy work during our relationship. Mandy immediately objects because that implies I worked for his company, which I never did. I speak up and say the statement needs to clearly establish that I was never employed by Jeremy's company, and that any work I did was personal assistance during our relationship, not corporate espionage. The mediator asks what specific language I need to see, and I say the statement must completely clear my name without making it look like I'm trying to humiliate Jeremy. Mandy whispers that my approach is smart because it makes me look reasonable instead of vindictive. We go back and forth on specific wording for over an hour. The mediation pauses while the attorneys work on drafting the exact language, and I have to leave for a board presentation at my company. I drive straight from mediation to the office and change into my presentation outfit in the bathroom. Walking into the boardroom, I'm very aware that several board members probably know about the situation with Jeremy. I set up my slides and deliver my operational efficiency proposal, walking through cost savings projections and implementation timelines. My voice stays steady and confident despite the stress of the morning. The board asks detailed questions and I answer each one with specific data points. At the end, they approve my project, and Roderick thanks me for the thorough analysis. Walking out of that boardroom, I feel like my work is speaking louder than any drama. 3 days later, Hannah calls me into her office with official news. The preliminary internal review has cleared me of any intellectual property misuse. She hands me a formal letter from my personnel file documenting the findings. My access restrictions get lifted immediately, and I can return to my full portfolio. I feel a physical weight lift knowing my company investigated and found nothing wrong with my conduct. That same week, I hear through a colleague in finance that Jeremy has been officially demoted from senior director to senior manager at his company. Apparently, his performance issues were serious enough that they offered him coaching and a development plan instead of termination. I don't spread the news or gloat about it to anyone. I just acknowledge privately that this is the natural consequence of his actual abilities without my help. The weekend after my clearance, I decide to file a police report about the restaurant incident. I drive to the station and explain to the officer what happened when Jeremy shoved Kian during our proposal. I show the photos of Kian's scraped knee and torn shirt. The officer takes my statement and explains that given the circumstances, I might be eligible for a restorative justice conference where Jeremy would have to face me and take accountability. I ask what that involves, and he describes a facilitated meeting with safety protocols. The idea appeals to me because it's about accountability rather than revenge. I tell the officer I want to explore that option. 2 weeks later, I get a call that the Restorative Justice Conference has been approved with Juliet Pierce as the facilitator. She explains the strict safety protocols, including security presence and physical separation during the meeting. I schedule prep sessions with a counselor to work through what I want to say and what kind of accountability I'm looking for. In the sessions, I realize I want Jeremy to acknowledge what he did and agree to leave me alone. I don't want him arrested or publicly shamed. I just want him to take responsibility for his actions and commit to staying out of my life. The counselor helps me practice stating my needs clearly without attacking him personally. I write down key points I want to cover and practice saying them out loud until my voice stops shaking. The conference happens on a Tuesday morning in a small meeting room at the Community Justice Center. I arrive early and sit in the waiting area checking my notes one more time. Juliet meets me first and walks me through the setup, showing me where I'll sit across from Jeremy with the table between us and security stationed by the door. When Jeremy walks in with his attorney, he looks tired and smaller somehow, not like the confident guy who shoved Kian 2 months ago. Juliet starts by explaining the process and asking Jeremy if he's prepared to take accountability for his actions. He nods and looks directly at me for the first time. He says he felt insecure when his work started failing and he blamed me instead of taking responsibility for his own problems. He apologizes for shoving Kian and for sending those messages harassing me after I refused to help him. His voice cracks a little when he admits he was wrong to interrupt the proposal and wrong to claim I stole anything from his company. I listen without interrupting, and when Juliet asks what I need from this process, I tell Jeremy clearly that I accept his apology, but I don't want any contact with him beyond this room. I explain that I need him to respect that boundary and leave me alone so I can move forward with my life. Juliet writes everything down in her official notes and has Jeremy sign an agreement that he understands the no-contact terms. The whole session takes 90 minutes, and when I walk out, I feel lighter, like I can finally close this chapter properly. 3 days later, both companies release a joint statement through their PR departments. The statement says that I independently developed strategic work in my professional capacity at my current company, that I was never employed by Jeremy's company, and that both organizations strongly oppose workplace harassment of any kind. It's professional and factual without turning into gossip or drama. Within an hour, my inbox fills up with messages from colleagues saying they're glad everything got cleared up and that they always knew I did good work. A few people from other departments I barely know send supportive notes, which surprises me in a good way. The public record is finally straight and I don't have to defend myself anymore. That same afternoon, Hannah calls me into her office with official paperwork. HR is removing all the security restrictions and protocols related to Jeremy effective immediately. I can access my full portfolio again without any limitations or special monitoring. Hannah closes her office door and tells me privately that she's really impressed with how I handled everything professionally despite the personal stress. She says most people would have either quit or caused a scene, but I managed to protect myself through proper channels while still doing excellent work. I thank her and admit that there were times I wanted to just walk away from the whole mess. She smiles and says that's what makes my choice to stay and fight the right way even more impressive. Walking back to my desk, I feel like I've proven something important, not just to the company, but to myself. That weekend, Kian sets up candles in our living room and gets down on one knee again, saying he wants to give me the moment Jeremy tried to steal. He pulls out the same ring and asks me to marry him properly this time with just the two of us. I say yes, and this time I can actually feel the joy without fear or anger clouding everything. We sit on the couch afterwards talking about what we want for our wedding and agree that we're going to have a long engagement and plan everything the way we actually want it. No rushing because of anyone else's timeline or expectations. Just us building our future together on our own terms. The following week, we meet with a family law attorney to discuss a prenuptial agreement. Kian suggested it first, which surprised me, but he explains that since we both work at the same company and have our own careers, we should protect each other legally. The attorney walks us through standard provisions and also helps us formalize workplace boundaries since we're in different departments. It feels practical and smart rather than unromantic. I appreciate that Kian sees this as protecting both of us and building something based on real transparency instead of just hoping everything works out. We leave the attorney's office holding hands, and I feel more confident about our future than ever. A podcast producer emails me the next day asking if I'd be interested in telling my story about overcoming workplace harassment and intellectual property theft. The email calls it an inspiring story that would help other women facing similar situations. I write back politely declining and explaining that I prefer to be known for my actual work, rather than for drama. When I tell Lainey about it over lunch, she bursts out laughing and says I'm probably the only person who would turn down that kind of attention. I shrug and tell her I already got what I needed, which was clearing my name and keeping my job. She raises her coffee cup and says that's exactly why I'm going to be fine. 2 weeks later, Roderick asks me to lead a new cross-functional initiative on ethics and documentation practices. The project focuses specifically on attribution and intellectual property, making sure people get proper credit for their work. It's a big expansion of my role and a clear vote of confidence from leadership. I accept immediately and start building a team, pulling in people from legal, HR, and operations. Turning my negative experience into something that will actually help other people feels right. I schedule the first planning meeting and feel excited about the work, instead of angry about what happened. I also set up standing check-ins with Lainey every other week, not to talk about work or Jeremy, but just to maintain perspective and take care of myself. She's become a real friend through this whole process, and I value having someone who knows the complete story, but doesn't define me by it. We try a new Thai restaurant and spend 2 hours laughing about normal things like bad dates her sister went on and a terrible movie we both watched. It feels good to just be a regular person having dinner with a friend. Around the same time, Jeremy transitions to an individual contributor role in a different division of his company. His attorney sends a brief formal note through Mandy confirming that Jeremy will respect the no-contact agreement going forward. I feel completely neutral about it. Neither satisfied that he got demoted, nor concerned about what he's doing now. He's dealing with the results of his own choices, and I'm focused on my own path forward. That chapter is actually closed. A month later, I get invited to participate in an industry roundtable discussion about operational strategy. It's a small group of directors and senior managers from different companies talking about best practices and process improvements. The whole conversation stays focused on actual work instead of personalities or drama. Several people mention during breaks that they've heard good things about my projects and ask thoughtful questions about my approach. I realize while driving home that my professional reputation survived everything intact. People are recognizing me for what I actually do and the value I bring, not for the mess with Jeremy. That's exactly what I wanted all along. A few days later, I send out invites for a small dinner at this Italian place near the office. Just a handful of people from my team plus Lainey. Nothing fancy, just celebrating some recent wins on our projects. We meet up on a Thursday evening and grab a big table in the back. Everyone orders pasta and we spend the first half hour just talking about normal stuff like weekend plans and a terrible movie someone watched. Then I raise my glass of wine and toast to good projects and supportive teams. Lainey adds something about moving forward and everyone clinks glasses. I feel genuinely happy sitting there, proud of what I've built without any connection to drama or conflict. This is just me and people I work with having a nice dinner, because we did good work together. The next week, I officially launch the authorship documentation initiative across all the strategy teams. I create clear guidelines about attribution and credit on team projects. During the rollout meeting, I noticed this junior analyst named Sarah sitting in the back looking uncomfortable. Afterward, she comes up to my desk and admits she's been hesitant to claim credit for her contributions on a recent project. I sit down with her and share some of my own experience about why documenting your work matters. I tell her how I learned the hard way that if you don't claim your work, someone else might take credit for it. She thanks me and says it helps hearing from someone who's been there. I watch her walk back to her desk standing a little taller. One evening a few weeks later, Kian and I are walking home from dinner and we pass by that restaurant where he proposed. The one where Jeremy interrupted everything. I feel this small tug in my chest, that old anger and embarrassment trying to surface. But then I squeeze Kian's hand and we keep walking toward home. I realize while we're crossing the street that what happened there doesn't define us anymore. We're building our future based on who we actually are and what we've learned. That feels solid and real and completely ours. That's my take on it. But I already know half of you are going to see it totally differently. And honestly, that's my favorite part. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's see all the different perspectives. And I'll be reading through them later.